Great, thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Dahlia Blass, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Financial Accounting Foundation. I'd like to welcome all our stakeholders who are tuning in to today's meeting. And as is custom, today's meeting will include reports from the FASB Chair, the GASB Chair, and the FAF Executive Director. We're also going to receive a report on the latest activities of the Financial Accounting Standards Advisory Council, as well as a report from the Trustees Standard Setting Process Oversight Committee. Before we get into these reports, I'd like to take a few moments to recognize 3 new members of the Board of Trustees, and who were appointed last November, and this is their first Board of Trustees meeting. First, Mark Baer. Mark was former CEO of Crow LLP, currently serving as partner at Crow and a trustee of the Crow Foundation. Greg McGreevy, a former senior managing director of Invesco, and John Bull Okpara, chief accounting officer and head of global financial control for Bank of America and former member of the FASAC. So please join me all in welcoming our 3 new Board of Trustees members. They've already hit the ground running, and we very much appreciate their insights and their participation. I would also like this opportunity to welcome Dave Sullivan to his role as chair of the FASAC. Dave retired after 35 years with Deloitte and now serves as a member of the Public Interest Oversight Board. He is very much well positioned to help navigate the issues brought to the council. And Dave, we're very, very grateful that after all these years of service, you continue to find time to continue to serve. So thank you for doing that. With that, we are moving on to our regular agenda. The first item of business is to approve the minutes from the board's November 18th, 2025 meeting. I recognize obviously that we do have new trustees, including myself, on this, although I was a guest chair in that meeting, if you will, or incoming chair, but mindful that there are those of us who are going to be abstained since we're not officially on the board. So with that, I would appreciate if I can get a motion on the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Great, thank you so much. The minutes have been approved. So with that, we're going to move on to our reports, and I will start with you, Rich. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Dahlia. Please find a copy of the fourth quarter chair report in your materials. I did want to spend a few minutes to update you on our recent activity. During the fourth quarter of 2025, the FASB issued final standards related to accounting for government grants, interim reporting, the accounting for purchased financial assets, hedge accounting improvements, and then codification improvements. And while the name doesn't tell you, there were 34 individual items in that codification improvements project. We also voted to move forward with an exposure draft related to accounting for paid-in-kind dividends on preferred stock and accounting issues related to market return cash balance pension plans. In addition, up through today's meeting, the board has completed redeliberations and voted to issue final ASUs on our projects on accounting for environmental credit programs, accounting for debt exchanges, and the initial measurement of paid-in-kind dividends on equity classified preferred stock. We are also actively working through the exceptional input we received from our stakeholders related to our 2025 agenda outreach. To date, we have brought back in front of our board 13 agenda request categories, and the board has added 5 projects to date as a result of that initiative. Our goal is to bring the remaining agenda input items back in front of our board for agenda decisions by the end of September. That's an aggressive goal, but one we are keenly focused on. We look forward to the continued input from our stakeholders as we prioritize our future standard-setting efforts. We are also continuing to work on the post-implementation review related to the current expected credit losses standard. And as discussed at our meeting back in November, we did recently issue the final lease post-implementation review, which is available on our website. On behalf of my colleagues on the board, I want to thank you for your continued support as we work to fulfill our mission, and I look forward to taking any of your questions. Dahlia?
Any questions for Rich? Manju?
Hey, Rich. My question is, FASB is looking at a recent standard on interim reporting. And that standard comes at a time when the SEC is looking at doing away with quarterly reporting. So my question is, what, if any, effect would that have on your standard? How are you proceeding in light of what SEC might be doing?
Great question, Manju. We're fortunate that our guidance in our accounting standards relates to interim reporting. So it doesn't specify frequency. So whether someone does a 1-month interim financial statement, a quarter, a semi-annual, it still applies. So we're very fortunate. The SEC, it's within their purview to decide how frequently a public company should or should not report financial information, but our standards work no matter what that time period is.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Other questions for Rich?
May I ask another question?
Please do.
Rich, as you begin your last full year as a chair of FASB, can you talk to us about what are your top priorities to accomplish in this last year?
Sure. Great question. And the time will go by quickly. I guess my priorities are probably not that different than any other board member. We're eager to fulfill our terms. I think we all recognize that we're here for a period of time, that we're effectively, stewards of financial accounting and reporting and the related standards, and that we have an opportunity to improve them. So I'm interested in wrapping up as much standard setting as we can to benefit our stakeholders, but by the same instance, making sure that we've kind of laid the plan and the roadmap out for my successor to come in, who they will have their view and the succeeding board members will have their views on how they can improve financial accounting and reporting. We're just interested in making sure they are set up to succeed.
Thank you.
Rich, if I may, our stakeholders at the SEC, the chief accountant, I believe even at one instance, the chairman of the SEC have stressed the importance of cooperation between the FASB and the IASB. Just some thoughts on how the boards are working together and how we can increase our cooperation, or any areas, specific issues top of mind in terms of working with the IASB.
Yeah, no, great question, Dahlia. We do spend a lot of time, and the IASB and other international standard setters do as well, sharing information, working together. When we're working on a project, we share that information with the IASB and other international standard setters. To the extent that they are seeing something and or working on a project, they share that information with us. We also have joint board meetings at least once a year with our international standard setter counterparts. That gives us a chance for board-to-board communications to really understand what priorities the different boards have. And so you may ask, well, why do you do that? Well, one is, there can be good ideas coming from anywhere around the globe. And sometimes one part of the globe will see an issue before another, and that's certainly helpful to us. But the other part is really as part of cost benefit. When we think of setting standards here under US GAAP, we recognize that there will be preparers that have to apply US GAAP, but also have to apply international standards, possibly for subsidiary filings. By the same instance, we also recognize that investors are often looking at a global capital market. And to the extent that they're comparing two automakers, one under US GAAP, one under IFRS, it's certainly in their best interest from a cost benefit perspective, the more comparable those are. So those are things we always look at. It's part of our cost benefit analysis of every standard we set. Are we converging? Are we diverging? Is there a good reason for different answers and different wording? And so I would say it's really fundamental to the standard setting process we have.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions for Rich? Seeing none, Joel, I will move to you and the GASB report.
Thanks, Dahlia. Good morning or afternoon, depending upon where you are. Happy to have some time to update you on what we have going on at the GASB. I'm going to talk mainly about the fourth quarter, but also probably talk about some things that have happened leading up to this meeting early in the first quarter. We did, as a board, issue Statement 105 in December on subsequent events. So we're really excited to have that new guidance out to improve, I think, the understanding of what should be disclosed as subsequent events, and therefore improve the consistency with which that information is getting to the users of the government financial report. Additionally, our other projects are moving forward. I'll highlight two that are coming up for actually exposure draft and comment periods soon in the first quarter. The first one being an update to our implementation guidance. The board actually didn't object to the issuance of an exposure draft of 8 new questions and answers and 1 amended question and answer related exclusively to help governments implement Statement 103, which is effective for the first time in 2026, and really even more specifically to understand a new concept added in Statement 103 for proprietary funds, which is subsidies. So we think this implementation guidance will help people in their implementations of an understanding of what should be classified as a subsidy and how those should be reported under new Statement 103. That exposure draft should be out relatively very soon. And the comment period will be 60 plus days. So towards the end of April, we'll finish that up and then try to get final implementation guidance out to help our stakeholders, hopefully sometime around June 30th. The other project that is coming close to having an exposure draft is our infrastructure asset project. So during the fourth quarter, we really concluded deliberations on this important project, really going back through all the comments we got from our preliminary reviews on that topic. And we expect to, or hope to, or scheduled to, maybe I should say, vote on an exposure draft to be released at our March meeting. We anticipate between 60 and 90-day comment period and to have a series of public forums related to that exposure draft on that important topic. Finally, I'll update you on our taxonomy project, our voluntary digital financial reporting project, not necessarily standard setting, but an important initiative of the board. And we did form, as I've talked about with you before, an external taxonomy consultative group to have 16 or 18 people from different backgrounds, preparers, auditors, users, as well as technologists who are providing input to our taxonomy project team as they make progress. And that taxonomy consultative group did meet with the board itself in December so that the board could hear some of the feedback they have on those architectural decisions and some of the initial parts of the taxonomy, which are scheduled to go out for public comment in a discussion memorandum that we plan to release sometime this summer so that we get even broader external input into the taxonomy project thus far. With that, those are our major highlights of our activities. Love to answer any questions that anybody has. Manju.
Thank you, Joel. In your earlier briefing this morning to the board, you talked about GASB is about to publish a series of videos on its website about the annual comprehensive financial report. Can you tell us what's behind these videos and what do you hope to accomplish?
Great. Thanks, Manju. I appreciate that question so that I can highlight another, I think, exciting initiative of the board, which is really a modernization of our user guides. We have a series of user guides that help different types of users understand what's going on with the government's financial report and how they might use it. Those exist now in PDF form. For example, we have one for elected officials that's about 200 pages. Hard to get an elected official, I think, to read a 200-page document to then understand the 200-page financial report that the government has. So we've created a series of videos really geared towards primarily elected officials, but really any maybe less sophisticated user of a government financial report. So these aren't technical videos. These are layman term videos. They're about 10 minutes each, and they walk through every part of the financial report and explain what's going on, what's this part of the financial report trying to tell you, and how might you specifically as an elected official use that part of the annual financial report. I would expect those to be released within the next week or two, and we're going to really promote them. And we have a number of our stakeholders like the League of Cities, the National Association of Counties and GFOA, who are going to help us promote this to elected officials and those other users of the government financial report so that everybody kind of understands and is better educated about the contents of that financial report and what that gap report is trying to tell you.
We're looking forward to seeing those, Joel, and then obviously invite all my fellow trustees when you see those, help in the promotion, get out to your networks. I think the more views, the more we're spreading the word about this great service that the GASB is providing. So thank you for your leadership on that one, Joel and team. Other questions for Joel?
I have one. Joel, in your final year as chair of GASB, what are your remaining priorities that you hope to get done?
Thanks, Marion. Like Rich, I would say primarily we do hope to get the infrastructure asset project done. I think it's an important project and we should be able to make that happen. For the rest of our standard setting projects, I think if we're listening to our stakeholders, if we're working on the things that we're supposed to be working on that are important to them, then we should just continue to progress those as much as we can while still making sure that they're getting done well and that we're getting all the feedback that we should have. And I think we have, while at times they can be moving targets a little bit, we are trying to leave each of those in a place that will make sense for the next chair and other members of the board that will be coming on at the same time to have a good point in time. For example, a recent release of an exposure draft, for example, so that they can then process the feedback and then continue to move those projects that we think are important and are important to our stakeholders forward.
Thank you.
Other questions for Joel?
Okay, another one. So Joel, congratulations. You talked about issuing the standard in December on subsequent events. So my question is, when will that take effect? And another question is, what improvements do you expect to see in future government financial reports as a result of that standard?
Sure, Manju. The standard requires that to be effective for 2027 financial reports. So that's when, although early implementation would be encouraged, that's when it is required to be implemented by governments. And the improvement there, really, the reason we undertook that project was research showed us that there was really a 30% error, primarily by omission rate, for things that in hindsight should have been disclosed as subsequent events, but weren't disclosed as subsequent events. So I think the board's intent there wasn't to really change what we always intended for subsequent events disclosures to be, but rather improve our explanation of it so that people could more consistently apply it and we wouldn't have such a large kind of omission rate, primarily debt issuances from the disclosures. As a result, users will get that information that they've always gotten inconsistently. They will get it now more consistently.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manju.
Other questions for Joel? Thank you so much, Joel. With that, we're going to move to Dave. Dave, for the FASAC report.
Thank you, Dahlia. Let me just make sure you can hear me.
We can.
Great, great. It's great to be with you all today. Our fourth quarter report is included in your materials, so I won't go into detail on that. I'll hit a few highlights. I did want to just mention we follow the format that we usually provide for the trustees, but we're also open to feedback. Whatever is most useful to you and performing your duties as a trustee, we want to make sure we're providing the right information. So as you read through those materials, if you have any feedback for us, please just let me know. Let me just give you a couple of highlights from the latter half of last year and then a few things that have happened or are happening, will happen in the next couple of weeks. We had our September FASAC meeting in person and discussed 3 topics at that meeting. The first one was on the 2025 agenda consultation. And there we had a breakout discussion, but we focused on those areas that received the most interest and the least interest in the respondents to the agenda consultation. So that was a useful discussion. We also talked about the effects of the use of technology on financial reporting and standard setting, including the investors analysis with particular focus on how future technological advances may impact the board's cost-benefit analysis in preparing standards. And then finally, we discussed the post-implementation review on current expected credit losses, as Rich mentioned earlier, and board members, or council members, pardon me, provided their views on the initial implementation and the ongoing implementation of CECL. Our December meeting was held virtually, and we had two topics at that meeting. We talked about risk management and hedge accounting, and specifically, council members shared their experiences and challenges with hedge accounting. They provided suggestions for improvement in hedge accounting to make it more approachable, useful for investors, and also representative of how companies manage risk. And we also had a discussion on potential paths the board might pursue in a long-term project on hedging. And the second topic was an implementation of recent standards, including disclosures about supplier financing program obligations, income taxes, segment reporting, and crypto asset accounting. A couple of weeks ago in February, we held an orientation with our 13 new FASAC members. Thank you, first of all, for appointing those members. We had a great session. They are going to be a great group of people to work with. And we have our annual administrative session coming up on March 9th prior to our next FASAC meeting, which will be on March 10th. The agenda for that meeting is expected to include the following topics. We expect to get an update on the agenda consultation project. We expect we'll probably get that every quarter, for at least for this year. We plan to spend some time talking about the board's agenda decision criteria, since they're making a lot of those decisions these days, and we want to get the views of council members. We'll talk about current macro trends and economic outlook, and then talk about the effects of use of technology on standard setting. You'll see that as a repeat topic. And let me just say, in January, I had the opportunity to be in Norwalk and meet with each of the board members and the technical director to talk about FASAC and potential future topics for FASAC. And we had some great discussions. Clearly, topics like the 2025 agenda consultation, the impact of the use of technology on financial reporting, on investors, on practitioners, and that sort of thing were high on the list. And so we'll continue to cover those current issues with FASAC as we move forward. Dolly, I'll hand it back to you. I'm happy to take any questions we might have.
Thank you for the report, Dave. Any questions for Dave? And please, if you have a question, just kind of chime in. I have two screens, so I don't want to miss any hands. Dave, you covered it all. They have no questions for you.
Perfectly clear. Excellent.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so next on our agenda is the Oversight Committee. Lara, are you delivering, or is it Manju? Lara?
I'm delivering. I'll start. Thank you very much, Dahlia. Our standard setting process oversight committee met virtually on Friday, February 20th. We did receive informational reports from both the FASB Chair, Rich Jones, as well as the GASB Chair, Joel Black. And as we do at every meeting, we discuss meetings that the trustees observed in the past quarter. Trustee Beth Pierce and FASB liaison to the PCC, Sue Cosper, then shared their observations of the PCC meetings that took place on December 11th and 12th. In addition, we heard from Trustee Beth Pierce on her observations of the GASAC meetings in October, the GASB meetings in October and December, and the IAC meeting in November. And we also heard from Trustee Marion D. on his observations of the FASB meeting on January 28th. Overall, the committee and its participants held productive sessions with the FASB and GASB leadership and many key standard-setting topics. For any stakeholder interested in viewing a recording of Friday's public session, you can find this on the FAF website. I'll now pivot to the FASB update, and then we'll pass it over to Manju. You just heard from Rich on the topics that he covered at the Oversight Committee. We also had FASB Technical Director Jackson Day with us, and they shared their progress since last quarter. Many of these topics you just heard from Rich. We included in there things like the due process summaries. You heard from Rich a few of the areas that have been covered. We also had an overview of 2 projects where redeliberations have been completed, and then when the board expects to issue final ASUs this year. We also covered the 2025 agenda consultation process, including the timing of the final report, which you heard from Rich. And then we also had a very significant conversation around how they're soliciting stakeholder feedback and how that feedback was considered by the board. This also included what you heard from Rich, an overview of the 13 topics that were identified as part of that agenda consultation. And then lastly, again, as Rich commented, we had the ability to have a deep dive around post-implementation reviews, both the completion of lease standards as well as credit losses. If it's okay with you, Dahlia, I'll pass it over to Manju and then to cover the GASB part of the Oversight Committee, and then we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lara.
Manju?
Manju, you're on mute.
So sorry. Regarding the report the committee received from GASB Chair Joel Black and GASB Director Alan Skelton reviewed the main highlights of the past quarter. Again, many of these matters have already been covered in the GASB Chair Black's report during this session. The primary topics reviewed by the committee included a review of the following projects: revenue and expense recognition, infrastructure assets, going concern uncertainties and severe financial distress, subsequent events, and 5th, implementation guide update. An overview of the due process for subsequent events, and the GASB issued this statement in the 4th quarter of last year. A discussion on GASB's voluntary digital financial reporting project with a focus on how the board continues to provide feedback to the taxonomy consultative group as it models different approaches for this project. And lastly, the committee heard about GASB's pre-agenda and other research activities underway and its latest PIR status of the OPAB, fiduciary and leases standards that it's currently undertaking. And with that, I will turn things back to you, Dahlia.
Thank you, Manju. Thank you, Lara. Any questions for the co-chairs or Oversight Committee? Okay, you guys are being so clear in your presentations that we're not getting questions. Fantastic. Erin, over to you for your report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to provide the Executive Director's update today. I'll start with my report with a brief update on our 2026 budget. The Board of Trustees approved our budget in November, and it was submitted to the SEC for its review, namely to verify that the FASB accounting support fees are consistent with the requirements of Section 109 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. We are awaiting completion of the SEC's review, which we expect within the next couple of weeks, at which time the Commission issues an order relating to the FASB's accounting support fees. Then management works with both the PCAOB, as it relates to FASB, and with FINRA, as it relates to GASB, to begin the assessment and billings for FASB and GASB accounting support fees. Our external audit firm, also BDO, completed its audit of the 2025 audited financial statements with no issues and a clean audit opinion. The second topic I want to talk about was the appointments update. So the Appointments Committee of our Board of Trustees, supported by the FAF staff and external search firms, will be responsible for the critical work of appointing trustees and members of our standard-setting boards and their advisory councils. Specifically, this year, we will be conducting searches for the FASB chair and a FASB board member, the GASB chair and a GASB board member, 3 at-large FAF trustees, 1 governmental FAF trustee, and several critical appointments on several of our advisory committees. The scope of the work for this year for the Appointments Committee is significant, and we really look forward to identifying and attracting outstanding talent to FASB, GASB, and the FAF. And with that, I will open it up to any questions and then turn it back to you, Dahlia.
Aaron, thanks for the report and welcome to the organization. As you look forward to all the things you've got on your list, I know it's quite a bit. What are your top 2 or 3 priorities as you think about the upcoming 12 months or so?
Thank you so much for the question, Pratt. I think over the next 12 months, we have an opportunity to continue the engagement within both FASB, GASB, and FAF, the interaction that we need to have as a leadership team and FAF's role in support of the standard setting mission, both to FASB, GASB, and to the FAF trustees is prime area of focus for me and for our organization. So that's one of them. I think we have opportunities to continue to do our jobs and to do it even better to support the mission. A second area of opportunity, I think, is technology in this changing world of the impact of AI and the tools and technologies that we're using internally to support the standard setting mission, but also to operate in an efficient manner within FAF. I think that's another area of great opportunity and priority in 2026. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Other questions for Aaron? I will note as we look at Rich and Joel, you guys handing over the baton to your successors, and the list of appointments that the appointments committee is is hard at work already looking at. Aaron, I look at you. You're one of the new ones that are here, and also our new trustees that I introduced at the beginning of our public session. That is all due to the fantastic work of the appointments committee. So with my deepest gratitude for all the work that you do. I know you spend an incredible amount of hours looking to make sure that we have a great pipeline and great folks that take on these positions. So with that is the end of the public session for today's Financial Accounting Foundation's Board of Trustees meeting. I do want to thank everybody who has attended our live webcast and those who will hopefully see it on our website. We very much appreciate the fact that you take interest in our work. Would like to remind everybody that our next meeting is going to be May 20th, Wednesday, May 20th, and it will be held in Washington, D.C. So I will be very glad to welcome you all to my hometown. And with that, have a fantastic day. And that is the end of our public session.